Hi, this is Dee at Aloha Astro, and today on November 8th, 2022, we have a full moon and a total lunar eclipse in the fixed Earth sign of Taurus. So let's take a look at the forecast that I've written for today. Full moon and total lunar eclipse in Taurus, Tuesday, November 8th, reveals the reality of changing values or pressures you to change them, as the moon conjunct Uranus and the North Node in Taurus opposes the South Node, Mercury, Sun, and Venus in Scorpio, while both opposing signs square Saturn in Aquarius. Taurus is a sensual, materialistic, and security-minded earth sign, which rules the second house of personal finances, values, and self-worth. Scorpio is a perceptive, sexual, and protective water sign, which rules the eighth house, where boundaries are merged or defended and values and assets are shared. Saturn, foundations, responsibility, discipline, commitment, mastery, integrity, in Aquarius, the future, humanity, organizations, intelligence, truth. The South Node represents unconscious behavior, potential past life influence, and a default path of least resistance, while the North Node points out purpose, life path, karma to be cleared, or lessons to be learned. Mars in Gemini is a busy planet now, activating subterfuge, futile wishful thinking, rationalization, and evasion as it squares Jupiter conjunct Neptune, both retrograde in Pisces. But the power of the truth will out, the rule of law, and a demand for accountability is present too, as Mars forms a trine to Saturn and a quincunx to Pluto. Uncomfortable truths, drama, and the breaking of bonds could look messy and feel painful, but the change and transformation imparted by the Moon and Uranus trine to Pluto is for the best, as the Taurus and Capricorn planets form sextile aspects of growth, abundance, inspiration, and healing to Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. The lunar eclipse brings things hidden to light, and it is the light which vanquishes the dark. So let's take a look at what we have going on in the sky, and then we'll take a look at the Sabian symbol. So here you can see the opposition between the Taurus energy and the Scorpio energy, and what makes this doubly and triply intense is the fact that we have a fixed T-square going on with Saturn, which is a very realistic, practical, work-oriented, reality check planet. And usually the planet that sits at that 90-degree angle pulls the energy from the opposition toward how can we make this work. It can be literally like a tool or a leverage to make the opposing sides find that meeting point or midway where they can agree to disagree, but they can work toward something. Now, fixed energy is stubborn, so it's going to be a little bit more challenging, and then throw in the lunar nodes and it takes on a whole new level of importance, because often there can be a life-changing decision that's made when the lunar nodes are activated, or there can be some sort of karmic balancing, or a going back to something that perhaps happened, whether it was in this lifetime or in a past lifetime, any unconscious behaviors, anything that you might do without fully realizing it. And with this opposition and the North Node, there can be a total coming to awareness of what's really going on, what you have been doing that's standing in your own way, or perhaps what the higher meaning is to any particular situation or relationship that you find yourself in, where there's contention or challenge, or you're seeing the difference in values between you and another person, or if something else is not working out correctly in your life. Like, for instance, if you're not making enough money at your job, well, why not? Maybe it has something to do with you, or maybe it has to do with your attitude toward money or your attitude toward your work, and your own self-worth and self-esteem. And we have the planet of communication in here, Mercury. We have the sun, which can bring an awareness of self. And then we have Venus, which is pleasure, desire, what feels familiar, comfortable, acceptable, what we would naturally gravitate toward. So whatever's out of out of what feels right or normal, or if we suddenly wake up, have an awareness of, wait a minute, this is why this is not good, this is why it's not working, this is why I'm not feeling like enough, or having enough, or getting enough, or this is the reality of the job or the relationship, particularly because the eighth house and Scorpio energy can be both financial as well as where we merge and share with somebody else in terms of intimacy, in terms of money, the deeper bonds of commitment. So all that can get stirred up. And then we have the Aquarius energy, which by its very nature looks toward the future and is open to change, although it is in Saturn, which is its ancient ruler, but now is associated more with the steadiness of Capricorn and less with the instability and erratic energy of Aquarius. However, it is its traditional ruler before we discovered Uranus and assigned Uranus to Aquarius. We had the influence of Saturn. We have that Uranian energy here with the moon. And that's significant as well because that is a planet of change or sudden happenings. In this case, with the moon, sudden feelings. And concerning what? Taurus rules the second house of money, personal values, self-worth, self-esteem, and the North Node about your life path or purpose or the lessons that you are learning. So there can be big aha moments, but will it be comfortable? Probably not, because T-squares always have a certain amount of pushing energy to them or bringing things to the point where it becomes so uncomfortable that change has to happen or something has to be done. So it creates pressure. It's very activating. And overall, we have a little bit more shadow going on with this square from Mars in dualistic Gemini, and it's currently in retrograde. So sometimes we want to go backwards or cling to the past in some way. Maybe there's a looking at alternative paths as we have Mars retrograde and questioning as to whether you're on the right path. Also motivations. We have Neptune and Jupiter both retrograde, and then we have Mars aspecting both Pluto and Saturn. So the willpower and determination is potentially there, but what are the motivations and what are the things that are maybe not true? Oh, what is real, what is not? How are people using manipulative tactics, or maybe even how are you trying to convince yourself of something that really has no basis in reality? And it may be kind of sad or painful to have to wake up to a reality and realize that something or somebody wasn't what you thought. And now a dream maybe is put aside, an illusion is put aside, and one path or one opportunity might close and shut down, and the actually harder path is probably the best path, whereas anything that seems to come too easily or anybody who promises something too readily, maybe there should be a little bit of suspicion and questioning as to why is it so easy. Pretty much right now, if it doesn't hurt in some way, it probably isn't real. So don't be afraid of the stuff that's going to bring up intense emotions, or don't be afraid of the revelations that might come to you. There is very strong opportunity for being able to, um, what's the right word? There's an overcoming energy here, whether it's your own inner resistance or something that's external to you. There is strong potential for the overcoming of challenges. Um, if you are willing to also take a look at yourself and how maybe where you've been unconscious, unaware, or being resistant or reactive, how you've been standing in your own way. And we've got this pattern right here with Jupiter and Neptune sextile to the Moon, Uranus, and the North Node, and also sextile to Pluto, while Pluto and Uranus trine each other. And this can bring the good stuff that comes out of recognizing the need for transformation and change and going for it. And also, in many ways, the Scorpio planets, because Scorpio is a sign of the high road or the low road, all or nothing type of energy, where there can be higher integrity or lower. And with the trine to Jupiter and Neptune, it does look as though whatever's of a higher vibration or whatever is of the light is more likely to be dominating in the long run, even though that fixed T-square can look pretty much like the dark might have an upper hand. In actuality, that trine right there, as well as this trine between Mars and Saturn, with Mars and Saturn, there's the accountability, and that quincunx here between Mars and Pluto. If somebody ventures too far off the path and attempts to bend rules too much, I have the feeling that the Mars-Saturn trine pulls things back into check and says, well, is this real? Or wait a minute, you can't do that without some repercussion. And repercussions are something to consider in any of your decisions right now. Whatever you decide to change or transform or do differently in your life, you have to think about how it affects not just you, but everybody else. And the lunar nodes are going to bring those lessons home, whether it's an immediate lesson or a lesson that you find over time. Most likely, I would say over time, because Saturn is involved here in that T-square. And Saturn is a planet of endurance and longevity and the slow, steady accumulation of time. So you might not see the immediate cause and effect going on until a little bit of time passes, and then you see the karma balancing, or what goes around comes around. There may be some things that come to your awareness immediately, because we do have impulsive energy with Mars in Gemini, where you can see the correlation, but think for the long range as well. Particularly if you're doing anything motivated by greed or spite or revenge or any of the negative things, there's going to be a backlash from that, because truly with this T-square, you would get pretty quick results with the Uranus energy that basically don't dish it out if you can't take it, or realize that whatever you might project out onto somebody else is actually something that you might carry within you, and the lesson will be brought to bear at some point in time. Chiron's in Aries. Aries is that cardinal fire sign that says I am. I don't have aspects in here toggled on, but it's definitely a planet that has to do with self-care, an awareness of your responsibility for nurturing yourself, caring for yourself, and that can help while we have the moon in Taurus, and some of the Taurus issues can be self-worth, self-esteem, valuing yourself. Um, and there is, there's healthy awareness of self, and then there's selfishness. While we have the trust axis of Taurus and Scorpio, and the issues of sharing or not sharing, I think that it's important to consider whether you're helping or harming in any interaction. And if it's harmful to you or somebody else, stop. If it's helpful and based on a pure motivation to simply be generous or kind or helpful, that's fine. But if the motivation is, if I do this, then that person will do that, then that's manipulative. And that would be emphasizing the negative side of the T-square. Challenging aspects are just that. They activate and they challenge. They aren't necessarily all good or all bad. In fact, more work and progress can happen under a dynamic energy pattern such as a T-square than often happens under something like a grand trine, where there's greater ease, flow, or natural talent available to be expressed or tapped into. And in this case, you have the option to choose what you are going to make of this full moon and eclipse. And do consider the long term when you make your choices or decisions. That Taurus energy is very personal and it's very immediate. It can be equated with things like satisfying your pleasures for the moment, or your dollar per hour rate of pay in your own personal paycheck, whereas the eighth house and Scorpio energy is where we look at that growth of money over the long term, or where our reputation perhaps can be affected by being with somebody else and looking at the values that they have and the values we have, and determining whether those values match up or not can be important for the long range, especially if later you have to go, let's say, appear in court and divvy up assets or fight over assets or any personal values that take on legal implications later on. So look closely at your values, work on your self-worth and self-esteem if you have issues with that. If you've been avoiding saying no in a situation where you know you need to say no, and maybe this full moon and lunar eclipse will help you to draw that boundary line and say, no, I won't do this anymore, or I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to work at this job anymore. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. And consider whether that's an impulse in the moment or whether that is the truth. Whether you're running away from work and commitment that you perhaps should be doing, or whether you're looking more at self-preservation and your own future growth by removing yourself from something that is too negative or challenging or no longer in alignment with your energy. So you may have to weigh the pros and cons of things, but ultimately the truth of something is probably going to be felt within your own body, because we do have Mars and Saturn in good aspect to each other, and they are both very physical planets. So if you can take the time to think of any issue or question and really tune into your body and see where you're feeling something, then perhaps see if that feeling coincides with any particular chakra and can point out which chakra might be blocked or needs to be expressed. That might be a good way for you to use this full moon when you're in meditation or ceremony, is ask your body to tell you the truth of things and then listen to what it's telling you. So it's a powerful lunation. Also, we don't have a Mercury retrograde right now, but I've been hearing from a lot of clients that they are having Mercury retrogradish things going on. And could it be Mars? Yes, it could be Mars. And the reason for that is because Mars is a planet of action, and in many ways Mercury is as well. Mercury rules transportation and communication. Mars can rule actual physical things like your vehicle or machinery and anything with gears and nuts and bolts in it, basically, or made of metal, or runs on like combustion engine, fiery energy. And it's in Gemini, and Gemini is a Mercury ruled sign of travel and communication. It has rulership over the third house in the zodiac chart, which is a house of travel and communication. So, yes, it can feel like Mercury retrograde. What people are finding is that the issues are resolving relatively quickly, or when they take a different direction or they're diverted, it's almost as if that diversion was meant to happen, or going with that flow rather than trying to resist against it is the way forward. Mars is squaring Neptune, and Neptune can be a planet of both beauty, healing, and inspiration, as well as illusion and deception and fantasy that isn't necessarily reality based. So there is some of that retrogradish, Mercury-ish, is this real? Or wait a minute, that email got lost, or I never got your phone call, or I thought the appointment was tomorrow, not today. Those type of issues can come up. So stay safe on the road. Watch out for things like road rage, because a lot of volatility is associated with the Mars and Pluto quincunx, as well as the Scorpio energy, and then the erratic energy of Uranus is very active right now too. Um, and if everybody's emotions are really being stressed at the moment, they may be very stressed while they're driving. So be cautious, drive defensively, and please put your communication devices away and pay attention to the road. Alrighty, let's take a look at the Sabian symbol. Taurus 17 we round up to, and it is a symbolic battle between swords and torches. Keynote: refusing to depend upon the past, the seeker turns warrior, fighting anew the eternal great war. When Gautama, having sought in vain for the answers to his questions among the teachers of tradition, sat under the Bodhi tree, he had to fight his own battle in his own way, even though it is an eternal fight. The spiritual light within the greater soul must struggle against the ego will that only knows how to use the powers of this material and intellectual world. There is no possibility of escape. It is the energy that arises out of the present moment, the inescapable now, that the daring individual has to use in the struggle. This second stage symbol suggests that salvation is attained through the emergent individual's readiness to face all issues as if there were only two opposed sides. So teaches the Bhagavad Gita. This is the Dharma of this stage of human evolution, a stage of polarization of values. Well, there we have it. And we live in a world, in a life of duality, and that is an inescapable thing. And history does repeat. We can look back to the last time Uranus moved through Taurus, and we can look toward the chart for the United States and the fact that it's on its Pluto return. And on the greater societal and political level, we are indeed repeating a lot of stuff. Hopefully things will swing toward the light and anything that's of the dark will be revealed, and people will find I would say, a meeting point between the opposition where the inevitability of the future coming and making wise choices based on more on logic and what needs to be taken care of rather than what personal feelings are, um, is the important thing. Both Mars and Saturn in these air signs will remind us that time does continue to march on, and that we still have to get up and do the work of each day and make the best possible choices and be of responsibility and integrity while we do so. And on the personal level, we have these lunar nodes here with the moon, and you have to basically go within yourself to deal with the nodal issues. That's not anything that you can go and impress upon anybody else. You can't make anybody else do anything, but you do have power and control over yourself and your own feelings and your own actions. So I think that that particular Sabian symbol couldn't be better. It's exactly the energy of this full moon and total lunar eclipse. I intend that you have meaningful revelations and clarity and truth comes to you at this full moon. Stay safe until I touch base with you again at the new moon 2 weeks from now.